So Death Stranding just got an amazing 8-minute long reveal trailer showing a ton of new info, never seen before gameplay, environments, mechanics, even combat and stealth, and of course many cutscenes. Pretty much amazing, but of course towards the end of the reveal we also had the official release date, which is November 8, 2019. So we finally find out more about when this game is going to be playable, as well as a little bit more on what it is all about, because there's a ton of confusion right now even after this trailer. So yeah, I must admit that I was left quite impressed by how the gameplay looks so far and even the story. And going over the general look first, as you might expect, the game looks absolutely gorgeous. I think only Red Dead Redemption 2 probably looks a little bit better, but you know, they both look very good, and Death Stranding makes no exception. I mean, 2019 towards the end, almost 2020, obviously it's going to make perfect use of the current gen hardware. Anyway, there's a lot of emphasis being put on realism, which was already noticeable from all of the previous trailers that we had, but now we also have more shots and more environments to analyze. From wide areas covered with grass to cities in ruins and even mountainsides and snowy regions. One particular scene shows the main character Sam walking through some knee-deep snow, which perfectly showcases those really nice and crisp snow physics and of course snow deformation. And if you take a look at the character's clothes, at some point it seems that they are also affected by the snow fall off and build up on the cloth itself. So that is very impressive. That is, you know, the type of technical detail that you see in games like God of War or Red Dead Redemption 2, and it definitely reminds me of those games because we had those kind of particle effects in those games as well. The open world is also very impressive, very large, and you can see a very nice draw distance over here. I mean, I'm not really sure exactly how much you can explore over there, but probably quite a lot of it, because many of the areas seem so distinct, and at some point the character can even be seen going to them. Of course, this doesn't mean everything is open world. There's also sections quite linear. For example, later on in the trailer we can see what's most probably part of some missions. There's a war zone going on over here with an active conflict, which I find really interesting, but there's also soldiers fighting in trenches, and the character even engages at some point with one of them and takes them down, and you can even see a tank shooting in the distance and Sam going behind it, covering from fire and probably from enemies seeing him. So pretty interesting. Again, visual effects are top notch, especially around the fire and the explosions. Those are really well made. Now moving on to traversal, this is also something that the trailer has put an emphasis on. There seems to be more than just a few ways to get across this presumably very large map, including of course vehicles. In one of the starting shots we can see the main character riding a very cool motorbike. It's not just in that cutscene, and it actually seems like it's going to play a more important role, as you can even see it later on being used in actual gameplay. And it looks like it's something that we're going to be using probably towards even the end game. It's not yet certain if the motorcycle has the same level of use and customization as like the one in Days Gone, for example, but still vehicles are an option and they exist, and there's more, including not just the motorcycle. We have this rover slash truck, for example, so hopefully we can also steal these and use them, but again, no gameplay was shown with that. Anyway, moving on towards other means of traversal, we also have on Foot Traversal. One thing that I really found interesting is the fact that the character can use various tools to pretty much go over whatever terrain he has in front of him. So for example, we can see this menu wheel over here popping up with several options, including one of them a ladder that you can pull up. You can pretty much extend it, and you use this of course in order to reach high points, but as you can see it is also physics based, so you kind of have to be careful where you set it up, because probably if you set it up incorrectly and it doesn't reach the ledge, for example, it's probably gonna fall off and you will need to retake it. At the very least, this is what this scene is implying. Nonetheless, there's also a rope pole that you can climb down from. If you're, for example, on a high point, you can set it down, take the rope, and then just go down the mountain range or the cliff itself in case you want to reach something that is of importance down under. And of course, we also saw an assault rifle on the weapon wheel, which means that weapons are on the menu. It was probably already implied by previous trailers, but now we can see it better in action. So for example, we have one of the scenes later into the video that showcases Sam shooting an assault rifle. And not just that, but it actually looks quite nice. Combat actually looks quite nice, though don't expect anything like Metal Gear Solid 5, for example. So it does take something from those games as well, but it has its own spin, and it's more centered towards survival from what I'm able to tell, rather than actual combat non-stop. But anyway, I was talking about combat, so let's move over to the next section, which is all about the combat. Now, combat does seem very interesting. There is a mix of weapons that you can use, as I've said, but most importantly also stealth. And stealth does play, or at least seems to play, a bigger role in this game than weapons, at least from what this trailer is showing. Right off the bat, while you can sprint as much as you want, the game does feature a sneak mechanic. You probably already saw it in previous trailers. There's also a pulse scan at some point, though I don't think it originates from the player. It would have been nice if we had a scanner. We might have one, but in different forms. In this particular scene, I believe that the scan itself originates from the enemies. As you can see, at some point when the character moves away from the spot, just like in most Assassin's Creed games, it shows the last known location of the player, which means that that is most probably going to be the last area that the enemies will check before moving on to checking out the surroundings. And you can move away from that to break the line of sight, so obviously stealth is going to be more complex than we anticipated. It's not yet certain if it's more advanced than Metal Gear Solid, but it still looks quite advanced. Now, speaking of line of sight, it seems that using the environment to your advantage is key over here. You can hide inside thick vegetation, like in this tall grass field here, for example, and this doesn't stop the enemies to search for you. From here on, the next scene is rather funny. I mean, one of them, for example, throws an electric spear on the ground, which not only pierces the ground, but it also creates a shock effect in the area. So if you probably walk in it, you're not gonna have a great time. On the other hand, the enemy behind the player that is still chasing him is instead using a melee swing as he is in range, though it misses. One thing I found curious was the fact that one enemy was able to knock down a certain supply crate of the character's backpack, which might very well mean survival is going to be one of the key features of this game, or main purposes. You're carrying your supplies, and not only do you have to worry about detection, about dying, about combat, but also about losing valuable resources. Nonetheless, you can fight back, as you might expect. Fighting back is going to play a big role just as stealth does, but it does not appear to be as tactical as it is in the Metal Gear Solid series, as I've said. There's regular melee attacks like punches and kicks. You can also use a briefcase to knock down someone. I'm not sure if there's other melee attacks you can use, like grabbing one of those spears that are thrown into the ground and attack back the enemies. We don't know yet, but you can use the briefcase. And as I've said earlier, weapons are also on the menu. There is a scene with the player shooting an assault rifle, which either has fiery bullets, either the enemy's death animation sets them on fire, like for example a demon being set on fire after being shot with certain types of bullets. If it's the first one with the fiery bullets, then that would be cool because it might imply that there's at least some kind of weapon customization and upgrade system. If not, even so, it's still looking good, so at this point this game is making me really curious. The rest of the video though is made out of various in-game cutscenes and story elements, though as I've said, in regular Kojima fashion, it's so hard to understand. What I did understand is the fact that, while the nations are collapsing, probably some cataclysmic event, or at the very least this is something that is happening to the United States, which is the place where this whole action takes place in, there's some militant separatist group called the Homo Demons. One of them, of course, being this character over here with the golden skull mask, which we saw in previous trailers. We can see his face momentarily at some point, though not much info is known about him. He does have a demon tongue, which he uses to lick women, so take that as you will. But one thing that we did get some answers for, or more answers, is for the babies they keep using in those tubes attached to them, and we saw multiple characters in the past using them. These are called the bridge babies, and they are apparently useful at detecting some kind of spirit world or demon world, and you can see these demons floating in certain areas, and they are referred in the trailer as BTs, whatever that means. Probably there's a lot of lore I'm skipping, but you know, I'm mostly interested in gameplay. What you will need is this baby in order to sneak past them, otherwise you might get spotted without even knowing, and the results are not going to be pleasant, trust me. But again, at some point I'm probably going to make a huge recap of everything we know about the story itself. Anyway, this has been Death Stranding's release trailer. It looks awesome. If you haven't checked it, I don't know what you're doing if you didn't, but it's huge, it looks good, it looks interesting. As always, if you enjoyed this video, then a like and a subscribe would be definitely super appreciated, and I will see you guys next time, so peace out.